The Brussels sprouts tasted like defeat. I pushed them around my plate at my in-laws' mahogany dining table, the same table where I'd been systematically dismantled for the past 5 years. So, Marcus, my father-in-law, Richard Pemberton, began with that tone I'd learned to dread. Still working at that, what was it again? Community Center? Youth Development Center, I corrected quietly. I'm the program director now. Program director, he repeated, making it sound like janitor. And that pays adequately? My wife Sarah shifted uncomfortably beside me. She knew where this was going. We all did. I make enough, I said. Enough? My mother-in-law, Diane, laughed, that tinkling, condescending laugh that made my skin crawl. Sarah darling, you can't be serious about staying in that cramped apartment. A woman of your caliber deserves better. Mom, we're happy. Happy? Richard set down his wine glass with unnecessary force. Happiness doesn't pay for private schools, doesn't buy houses in proper neighborhoods, doesn't secure your future. We're not planning on kids yet, Sarah said, and we like our apartment. Like? Diane's perfectly penciled eyebrows rose. You like living paycheck to paycheck? You like driving a 10-year-old Honda when you could have a Mercedes? It's an 8-year-old Toyota, I muttered. Even worse, my brother-in-law, Preston, chimed in, Princeton MBA, investment banker, everything the Pembertons wanted in a son-in-law. You know, Marcus, Goldman is always hiring. I could put in a word, entry level, of course, but I don't want to work at Goldman Sachs, I said firmly. I love my job. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Richard leaned back in his chair, studying me like I was a particularly disappointing quarterly report. A real man, he said slowly, would provide better for his family. A real man would have ambition, drive, the desire to give his wife the life she deserves. Richard, Sarah warned. No, princess, this needs to be said. He turned back to me. When I was your age, what are you? 32? 34. When I was 34, I'd already made my first million. I had a house, paid for. I had investments. I had a plan. What's your plan, Marcus? To spend the rest of your life playing basketball with troubled teens? They're not troubled, they're underserved, I said through gritted teeth. And I don't just play basketball. I run programs that keep kids off the streets, help them get into college, teach them life skills. Noble, Diane interrupted, the word dripping with disdain. Very noble, but nobility doesn't pay bills, does it? We pay our bills just fine, Sarah said firmly. Do you? Preston smirked. Because I seem to remember you borrowing money from Mom and Dad last year. That was for my student loans, Sarah shot back. One time, and we paid it back. The point remains, Richard said, that a real provider wouldn't put his wife in that position. Look at Preston. Melissa has never wanted for anything. Melissa, Preston's wife, sat silently at the end of the table, her smile as plastic as her surgically enhanced features. She hadn't said a word all evening. She never did. Some things, I said carefully, are more important than money. Spoken like someone who doesn't have any, Richard replied. That's when my phone buzzed. I glanced at it, a text from my assistant at the center. Boss, that call you were expecting? Line 1 in 5 minutes. Excuse me, I said, standing. I need to take this. Work emergency. Work emergency? Richard laughed. What? Did someone steal a basketball? I walked out, their laughter following me, but I wasn't angry, not anymore. Because they didn't know about Hartwell Holdings. They didn't know that for the past 3 years, while they'd been mocking my little job, I'd been quietly building a real estate empire. It started with one rundown apartment building near the youth center, purchased with an inheritance from my grandmother that I'd never mentioned to anyone except Sarah. That building became 2, 2 became 5, 5 became a portfolio worth $8 million, all hidden behind an LLC that kept my name off the public records. They didn't know that last month, I'd purchased a controlling interest in Pemberton Financial Services, the mortgage company that held the notes on half the properties in their wealthy suburb, including theirs. They didn't know that the work emergency was a scheduled call with my lawyer to finalize the restructuring that would begin Monday morning. I took the call in Richard's study, surrounded by his diplomas and photos of him with minor celebrities. Mr. Hayes, everything is set. The letters will go out Monday morning to all account holders with adjustable rate mortgages whose terms are being modified under the new ownership structure, and the Pemberton residents, specifically flagged as you requested. Their ARM resets Monday from 2% to the maximum allowable 8%. Completely legal under their contract terms. Perfect. Send it. I hung up and stood there for a moment, looking at Richard's wall of accomplishments. His MBA from Wharton, His photos from the country club, his Businessman of the Year plaque from 1998. All built on a house of cards that I now owned. When I returned to the dining room, they were still laughing about something, probably me. "Everything all right?" Sarah asked, touching my hand. "Perfect," I said, sitting down. "Just some paperwork that needed approval." "Paperwork," Preston scoffed. "What, permission slips for a field trip?" "Something like that," I agreed. Richard was refilling his wine glass, his face red from alcohol and smugness. "You know, Marcus, it's not too late. You could still make something of yourself. 34 isn't ancient. With the right mentorship." "I appreciate the concern," I interrupted. "Really, but I'm exactly where I want to be. Playing games with children while your wife deserves better?" Diane shook her head. "That's not being a man. That's being selfish." "Mom," Sarah snapped. "What?" "Someone needs to say it. You're beautiful, accomplished, from a good family. You could have had anyone. Dr. Thompson's son, the Ashford boy, even that tech entrepreneur. What was his name?" "She chose me," I said quietly. "Yes," Richard said heavily, "she did, and we've respected that choice, but respect doesn't mean approval. A real man would recognize his inadequacies and strive to overcome them. A real man would." That's when the phone started ringing. First Richard's, then Diane's, then Preston's. They all looked at their screens with varying degrees of annoyance. "Pemberton Financial?" Richard frowned. "At this hour?" He answered. "Richard Pemberton speaking. Yes, I'm a client." "What? That's impossible. Let me speak to." "What do you mean the company's been sold? To whom?" I buttered a roll, watching as his face went from confused to alarmed to furious. Diane was having a similar conversation. 9.8%? That's usurious. We've been customers for 20 years. I demand to speak to Mr. Hartwell immediately." Preston was frantically scrolling through his phone. "Dad, Pemberton Financial's been acquired. It was announced after close of business today." "Hartwell Holdings? I've never heard of." Wait, this can't be right." "What?" Richard barked, his phone still pressed to his ear. "The acquisition price. Hartwell bought PFS for $42 million, cash." $42 million? Diane gasped. "Who has that kind of money?" "More importantly," Preston said slowly, his face pale, "who is M. Hayes, CEO of Hartwell Holdings?" All eyes turned to me. I took a sip of wine. "More Brussels sprouts. Anyone?" "You?" Richard's voice was barely a whisper. "That's impossible. You're nobody. You work at a community center. You drive a Toyota." "I do work at a community center," I agreed. "I also own 14 apartment complexes, 6 retail centers, and as of 5 p.m. today, Pemberton Financial Services. Oh, and I do drive a Toyota. It's paid for, unlike your Mercedes, which I believe has 3 years of payments left, at 6.9% interest, if I remember the file correctly." "This is a joke," Diane said faintly. "Some kind of trick." "No trick. Although I did find it interesting reviewing your mortgage application from last year. The one where you refinanced to pull out equity for Preston's wedding? TSK. Adjustable rate mortgages are so risky in this market. You can't do this," Richard sputtered. It's predatory. It's business," I finished. "Isn't that what you always say? Business isn't personal?" "Well, I'm restructuring the portfolio. All ARMs are being reset to their maximum allowable rates. It's all perfectly legal. You should have read the fine print." "We'll refinance with another company," Preston declared. "Good luck with that," I said mildly. "Given your debt-to-income ratios, did you really think I wouldn't notice the second mortgage? The HELOC? The credit card debt you consolidated last year?" Sarah was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. "Marcus, is this real?" I turned to her, my voice softening. "I wanted to tell you, but I knew how they treated me. And I didn't want you defending me with money that wasn't really yours. I wanted to see if they could ever accept me for who I am, not what I have." "And?" she asked quietly. "And a real man, apparently, needs to provide better." I looked at Richard. "So I am. Starting Monday, you'll be paying an extra $3,200 a month on your mortgage. Preston, yours goes up $1,900. Mom and Dad, that condo in Florida you thought we didn't know about? Also mine now, also adjustable." "You're destroying us out of spite?" Diane whispered. "Destroying you?" I laughed. "I'm applying the same business principles you've worshipped your entire lives. Market rates, profit maximization. Isn't that what real men do?" "Marcus," Sarah said, and I could hear the warning in her voice. She knew me well enough to know I wasn't cruel. "Not really." I sighed. "Relax. I'm not going to bankrupt you, but you are going to learn what it feels like to struggle, to worry about bills, To understand that sometimes good people work hard and still barely make it. I stood up. Consider it an education in humanity. This is illegal, Preston said desperately. There are regulations, written by people like you to protect people like you. I agreed, but full of loopholes for people smart enough to find them. Funny thing about dismissing someone as nobody for 5 years, they have a lot of time to read contracts, study markets, plan. What do you want? Richard asked, his voice defeated. Money? An apology? I want you to understand, I said simply, that the measure of a man isn't his bank account. It's not his car or his house or his country club membership. It's how he treats people, how he loves his family, how he makes the world better. Pretty words, Diane spat. From someone holding our homes hostage. I prefer to think of it as aggressive negotiation. I pulled out a folder from my jacket. I'd been carrying it all evening. Waiting. Sign these. What are they? Richard asked suspiciously. New mortgage terms. Fixed rate. 3%. 30 years. They stared at the papers like they might bite. 3%? Preston calculated quickly. That's below market. That would save us about $200,000 over the life of the loan. I confirmed. Each. What's the catch? Richard demanded. The catch, I said, is that you'll volunteer at my youth center. All of you. Richard, you'll teach financial literacy. Diane, you'll run our job interview prep program. Preston, you'll mentor kids interested in business. You're blackmailing us into charity work? Diane gasped. I'm offering you below-market mortgage rates in exchange for community service. I corrected. 20 hours a month. For 5 years. Or you can keep your current terms and figure it out yourselves. This is insane, Preston muttered. This is opportunity, I countered. The same opportunity those kids at my little community center need. The chance to learn from successful people. To see that there's more to life than the streets. And if we refuse? Richard asked. Then you pay market rate like everyone else. Your choice. Free market, right? Sarah reached for my hand under the table, squeezed it. I could feel her pride, her amazement, her love. I need to discuss this with our lawyer, Richard said stiffly. Of course, you have 72 hours. After that, the offer expires and the new rates lock in. I stood, pulling Sarah up with me. Thanks for dinner. The Brussels sprouts were excellent. You planned this, Diane accused. All of it. 4 years. No, I said honestly. I planned to get rich quietly and never tell you. But then you had to keep pushing, keep insulting, keep telling me I wasn't man enough. I shrugged. Turns out, by your definition, I'm more man than all of you combined. Funny how that works. We headed for the door. Behind us, I could hear frantic whispers, the rustle of papers, the sound of Preston furiously texting, probably his lawyer. In the car, Sarah finally spoke. 42 million? Give or take. The real estate alone is worth 8. The mortgage company was undervalued. Bad management. I glanced at her. Are you angry? Angry? She laughed, nothing like her mother's laugh. This was real, warm, delighted. I'm furious. How dare you let me defend your Toyota for 5 years when you could buy a fleet of Ferraris? I like my Toyota. I know you do. She leaned over, kissed me. That's why I love you. But Marcus, the youth center? That's really what you want to do. It's what I've always wanted to do. The money, that's just tools, resources, ways to do more good. And my parents? Will either learn that everyone has value, or they'll pay through the nose for their prejudice. Either way, I win. We win. She corrected. Partners, remember? Always. My phone buzzed. Richard, we'll take your deal. I showed Sarah. She smiled. Think they'll actually show up? Oh, they'll show up. Nothing motivates a Pemberton like money. I pulled into traffic. But maybe, just maybe, they'll learn what real wealth looks like. What's that? 17 kids from the center got into college last year. 3 are at Ivy League schools. 1 just got a full ride to MIT. I smiled. That's worth more than all the mortgages in the world. You know what this means? Sarah asked. What? We're going to be really popular at next year's family dinner. Or really unpopular. Either way, she said. You're definitely man enough for me. Even with the Toyota? Especially with the Toyota. We drove home to our cramped apartment, the one her parents hated, the one we loved, the one we'd chosen together. Tomorrow, I'd go back to the youth center. Tomorrow, Richard Pemberton would learn what a day's honest work really looked like. But tonight? Tonight, I was just Marcus Hayes, community center director, Toyota driver, husband. And apparently, according to the Pemberton family's own metrics, the only real man at the table. Funny how a little restructuring can change perspectives. Funnier still how money only matters when you don't have it, or when someone else controls yours. Hey, Sarah said as we pulled into our building's garage. Next time they say you're not man enough, yeah? Remind them that a real man doesn't need to announce it. He just goes quietly about the business of building empires, and youth centers, and really, really good marriages, even in cramped apartments, especially in cramped apartments. Although, she grinned, maybe we could upgrade to a 2-bedroom? You know, since you own the building? I laughed. I own 3 buildings on this block. Actually, of course you do. She shook her head. My secret real estate mogul husband, who drives a 2016 Camry. 2015, I corrected. Even better. As we climbed the stairs to our 3rd-floor walk-up, in a building I'd bought 3 years ago but never moved out of because we genuinely loved our apartment, I thought about Richard's words. A real man would provide better. He was right. In a way. I did provide better. I provided love, support, partnership, purpose. And starting Monday, I'd provide him with a lesson in humility. At 9.8% interest,